Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of CoinNewsExtratv interview session, a program where we invite innovators, stakeholders, influencers in the blockchain, crypto, and fintech ecosystem to come their view. I'm your host, Lee. So we are going to be looking at a very important topic. That's the importance of building on a blockchain network. So it's a nice conversation. You know, a lot of businesses out there are looking at projects, are looking at how do I implement a blockchain technology into what I'm already doing. So this is a very good conversation if you have such questions. So I have our guest who is joining us to have this conversation. He is William Reynoir. William is a business development at Reynoir Foundation. He's joining us from Chicago. William, you're welcome.
Hey, Obiam, thank you so much for having me. I know it took a little while to get on the stream beforehand, had a little technical difficulties, but I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can share some insights from the Near Foundation.
Interesting. And also, we really appreciate, I know it's early morning for you there in Chicago. Thank you for making our time. That's the love of the ecosystem. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty used to having to have a pretty flexible schedule because what's one thing that's so cool about I think this the blockchain ecosystem and industry is that it is truly a global industry where I'll have to sometimes take calls at late at night or early in the morning because I'm talking to someone all the way around the world, which is really cool. But it has its cool parts, but also some of its drawbacks sometimes. But I'm here for it.
Interesting. So for our audience, whichever platform you are joining us from, do well. If you have any question, there will be a segment. If we have any question, we'll be able to take your questions. So if you are wherever you are watching us from, do well to like and share this video, and also do well to follow CoinNewsExtratv across all social media platforms at CoinNewsExtratv. So we go for a very short break. When we return, we delve into the conversation proper. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back. Welcome back. It's still CoinNewsExtratv interview. So we are looking at the importance of building on a blockchain network with William Reynoir from who is the business development at Reynoir Foundation. So I will allow you to William to do a brief intro about yourself. Then I will continue with the questions I have here. Please.
Thank you. So, like you mentioned, my name is Will Reynoir. I am on the business development team at the foundation, the Near Foundation, that is. And so the Near Foundation is basically the nonprofit arm of the Near protocol that is meant to just fuel the growth of the Near ecosystem. So if you're unfamiliar with Near, Near is a layer 1 blockchain as well as a blockchain operating system, which we will get to in a sec, I believe. But basically, our job is to use our treasury of funds to help bring on projects and help also just connect projects to one another and also just help fuel the development from a technical perspective. So help onboard any brands, any smaller Web3 companies, just making sure they're comfortable building on Near and supporting them in whichever way we can. For my personal job at the foundation, I focus a lot on the sports media and entertainment verticals, but I also do some work within the growth and infrastructure side as well. So hopefully I can give some pretty good context across those verticals today.
Yeah, interesting. The number one question I have here. What are some of the key benefits? We are talking about the importance of building on a blockchain network. What are the key benefits of building on a blockchain network?
Yes, great question to start. So one, just like if you really look at it at like a 10,000 foot view, what blockchains enable are basically true peer-to-peer transactions digitally. So let's break that down. So when we think of peer-to-peer transactions, it's literally would be me handing you Obioma like a $5 bill or whatever kind of currency, right? That's just me, like a peer-to-peer transaction between two of those. When the whole world moved digital in the 90s and 2000s and 2010s, um, we lost the ability to transact in a peer-to-peer way, forcing people to use a bunch of these middleman services like a Cash App or a Venmo, or when we think of, remittance payments like a Western Union. Even you could think of like your bank as one too, to be honest. And so we lost that ability. And so what blockchains re-enable is being able to transact in a peer-to-peer way, but do it digitally instead of like in person, right? And so that enables so many potential use cases. But the biggest thing is it really abstracts away any type of middleman business. So just as like a few examples, if there's like these ticketing services like a Ticketmaster that take so much money away in fees and transaction costs, where a fan isn't going to like buy a ticket on Ticketmaster because it's Ticketmaster. They're doing it because they're a fan of a sports team or they want to go to this music event, right? And so now these sports teams and music events, they can just go straight to their customers to purchase tickets, making it cheaper for customers and potentially giving them more potential profitable upside. Another example could be remittance companies, right? So remittance companies are very famous for obviously like taking out a bunch of money from a transaction, sometimes at like a 5, 10, even 15% fee. And so like when you're trying to send money to any friends and family from across the world, they're getting 10%, like only 90% of that, not the whole 100%. On a blockchain network, you can send that money across the world in seconds without any middleman business trying to extract away some of those funds. Um, so I think that's one of the biggest benefits personally, if we're looking at like a high level overview. But also when we look at the actual building, so if you're a developer building, the fact that it's open source means that it's really easy to pull from others' work to give you like a good building block to start at, and also it's very collaborative. In a like an internet environment that's known for being like having these walled gardens, like a Google, like Facebook, like these big tech giants. Building on blockchain is completely open source and it's very collaborative. So it's very easy to work with other individuals to build cool projects and services.
Yeah, William, people, businesses are already used to the normal Web2 platform. What are some of the, you've been able to look at the importance of building on the blockchain network. So let's look at some of the challenges. I know must be some of the challenges, most especially at the entrance level and also building on the network itself. What are some of those challenges and how can it be avoided?
Yes. So, I mean, I think just like the early version of the internet, right? It's not, you're not going to go from, um, the start of like a whole internet ecosystem to like being 100% usable right away. So like one of the biggest challenges that I've seen is obviously like the complexity from a development perspective. So most traditional developers, I say, they're used to these like pretty common worldwide languages like Python and JavaScript. But when you go to the blockchain space, you have all of these new languages like a Solidity for a lot of the Ethereum virtual machine or EVM. Near is a Rust-based network, which is like the main coding language from Near mainnet. And so it's really difficult for builders to just, obviously like transfer from a Python or JavaScript to like a Solidity or Rust, right? Because it's almost like learning a whole new language that, you communicate with, except obviously, you're typing code. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges is that, especially for like more traditional developers looking to build on blockchain, is they kind of have to start from square one. Um, Another one is, and this I think is starting to get solved in a lot of ways. I think Near is one of the main players helping out, but the lack of interoperability between chains, right? So obviously on like a chain like Ethereum, there's some interoperability between the main layer one and the layer two networks, like an Optimism and Arbitrum. But if you want to try to interact from Ethereum to a Near, right, or a Solana or a Bitcoin, it's extremely, extremely hard to communicate and transfer data between those different networks. And so what that makes it really hard to do is, one, it's harder to reach other audiences, right? So because if there's some audiences that are more familiar with Near, they're going to mainly stick with Near based products. If they're more familiar with an Ethereum, they're going to stick with Ethereum based products. And so it's really hard to like capture value from users if you don't have like this, obviously like big connected circle where all these chains are like can easily interact with one another. However, this is getting solved. There's a lot of companies like a Layer Zero, for instance, that is doing a really good job, like hopefully solving this problem. I think Near is also one with it's our blockchain operating system, which we'll probably get to in a little bit. So I don't want to spoil any thoughts I have on that question. But yeah, like I'd say those are probably the two biggest problems I've seen in terms of challenges of building on a blockchain network.
Yeah, interesting. Let's look at some of the industries or yeah, sectors that really need blockchain. When people are talking about blockchain, it's as if it's for a particular set of industry. So, which industries can you really apply blockchain technology?
Yeah. So I think overall, like there's a lot of industries that could benefit from the efficiencies created by blockchain. Like I said, like if you look at it at a high level, just the fact of being able to transact in a peer-to-peer way digitally um, is very, very important and useful for a bunch of different industries. Whether you think of like the financial sector or you think of, the supply chain management, supply chain management goes across tons of different industries, right? Whether it's, food, healthcare, sports, really, really anything. So I think it has the potential to really impact a ton of different industries. One at Near that we think is in particular like pretty this technology would be pretty useful to it's kind of like the lifestyle industry. So as I mentioned earlier, I kind of focus a lot on the sports media and entertainment verticals at the Near Foundation. And we think that's one that is really potentially could be impacted by blockchain technology, particularly around the loyalty and rewards use case. So if you think of like a sports team, for instance, right? Um, there are so many third party players that are kind of in the middle between the sports team and their actual fans. So think of like TV networks, um, like sporting goods companies, ticket services, right? So there's all these kind of intermediaries between the actual sports team and their actual fans. And so due to that, there's a lot of cases where, I've taken meetings with some of these sports teams where they'll tell us that they don't actually know who their fans are, which really shocked me in the beginning. But when you think about it, fans that are watching a sports game on TV, the people that know that data are the broadcasters, not the sports team, right? If you're selling tickets to fans on a platform like Ticketmaster knows who those fans are, not the sports team. If you're selling your jerseys at like a clothing store, that clothing store knows who your fans are, not the sports team. So when you kind of break it down, you realize that these sports teams really don't know who their fans are. So through Web3, and the best example of this today is Starbucks. They have their fan loyalty reward system that's built on the blockchain, built on Polygon. Um, we think there's a lot of potential for these kind of lifestyle brands. Let's use like the sports team, for instance, that they can go direct to their fans. Like I mentioned, they're able to transact in a peer-to-peer way. So they're able to go to direct to their fans and basically skip over all of those different third-party intermediaries and then they're able to actually capture who their true biggest fans are, and then they're able to upsell to those fans, right? And so I see it as a win-win.
Okay.
So for the sports team, you know who your fans truly are, and you now know like who are the best people for you to target for, if you're trying to sell tickets, if you're trying to sell any kind of like fan like jerseys or memorabilia, anything like that. And then from the fan perspective, you can get better targeted by these teams and just have a more enriched experience of being a fan of that team. So I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Because of our time,
Yeah.
we are going to go for a quick break now, just a very short one. So when we return, we continue with the conversation. Please do not go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. It's still CoinNewsExtratv interview. We're looking at the importance of building on a blockchain network. So we have some questions that are coming up from our audience who are asking some questions here. But before I take questions from the audience, I just want to ask you just one question from me. Let's look at some of the impacts NIA is making in the blockchain ecosystem. What are some of the impacts that NIA is making, just briefly?
Yeah, so one of which I kind of mentioned is the blockchain operating system. So this is something, if you check our Twitter page, you'll probably see like a tweet about it every other tweet. But basically, it's decentralizing the whole web stack. So if you think of the back end, middleware, and front end, the back end, obviously, right now in the blockchain space is typically like on the blockchain. But if you look at the front end, a lot of that's still stored on like an AWS or some of these big centralized entities. So this allows the whole stack to be decentralized, built on the blockchain, which is also big for interoperability. So through this blockchain operating system, we can actually create gateways to other chains. So you can check it out right now. It's boss.gg or bos.gg. You can actually stake Ethereum on Lido through a front end that's built on Near. And so we think this can be really big for the interoperability play that I mentioned, where we're able to create a decentralized front end built on the blockchain that can access multiple other chains like an Ethereum, like a Solana, like a Polygon. So that's kind of like what we see as one of the biggest impacts we've had on the blockchain ecosystem thus far.
Interesting. This segment, I will be going to let me look at some of the questions that we have here from our audience. Number one here is, let me check just a moment. Talking about this is from Kings Euro. Talking about support. Are there financial ways near support builders asking for a friend in need that wants to build? That's so. Can you answer that?
Yes. So the Near Foundation does support builders on the Near blockchain. So there are multiple ways we do that. Obviously, like we will publish kind of any new developments in terms of what the core devs are building on the Near blockchain, so you can get like up to date on like kind of what are the best, what's like the biggest and the best things that are happening. In terms of financially, the Near Foundation will distribute grants with like some of the bear market conditions. We do want to make sure we extend our runway at the Near Foundation, so we're not writing. We joke around and say quote unquote like bull market checks, right? Where you see some of these deals that came during not just at Near, I'd say really less at Near compared to a lot of other blockchains, where they were writing like multi-million-dollar checks to companies that really didn't like have too much fun. Like think of like an FTX sponsoring like every sports league and stadium. So we will support financially as well, and you can find more info on the Near website for some of those requests.
Yeah, I know, there is another question here. Definitely important to understand everyone's strength within the blockchain space. That's from HDB, space for effective collaboration. One of the biggest challenges is getting collaborators to understand what blockchain technology is. So I guess that's just a comment.
No, but actually I want to comment on that quick. I do agree. One thing that's really struggling around just the blockchain space as a whole is the lack of education. There are so many people still, including like friends of mine who, I've tried to tell them all about it and they still don't get it. They just all think it's a scam. They all think it's like a pump and dump scheme. I think the biggest thing for that is we need to make sure we separate the blockchain technology itself with crypto, and they are related. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of people, especially big media outlets, will focus on the crypto because that's just the money number going up and down, and that's what's exciting. That's what gets clicks for them instead of focusing on the actual technology and what it enables. So I think if you want to try to get people to start learning more about it and hopefully being more collaborative and building, focus on the blockchain technology itself, and I think that's like the best place to start, and that's what I've found to have the most success in explaining this technology to people.
Yeah, another question from Ferry Mason. He said, can I build AI projects on Near?
Yes, great question. So, funnily enough, one of our co-founders, Ilya, he was actually a in his past life. He was a researcher at Google who actually he helped co-author the "Information is All You Need" paper, which basically laid out the transformer architecture that all the big LLMs are built on, like a Chat GPT, or not Chat GPT, just GPT or Google Bard. And so he is very, very well versed in the AI space. And he wanted to make sure he built a blockchain that could enable AI use cases. So, yes, it is very possible to build AI projects on Near, and it's one area that we are seeing more and more activity in on the blockchain, on the Near blockchain.
Okay, another one here is still the same person, Ferry Mason. Does Near Protocol invest in projects?
Yes, we do. So we kind of have like two main ways that we fund projects. It's either in the form of a milestone based grant. So we'll kind of lay out with the project like we want to make sure you achieve these milestones, and then um, as you achieve those milestones, you are released funds. And then sometimes we will also write equity checks for projects that are fundraising. Typically, however, because we're an ecosystem fund and not a venture capital fund, we're not really looking to gain like an ROI, right? Return on investment. We're mainly just looking to grow the Near ecosystem. So we typically stick more to the grant side, but it is an option as well. So yes, we do invest in projects. Are there any other questions? Did we lose Obioma? Can people on here still hear or see me? You can say in the chat, I guess.
Hello,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we had some network issues. Okay, please continue. You are answering some questions. Video.
Oh no, I think that the last one I answered was just that yes, like the near foundation, rather, not the near protocol. The near foundation will invest in projects either mainly in the form of a milestone based grant or equity check.
Okay. Also, can you hear me? Can you still hear me, William?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. So
Great.
just lastly, before we draw the curtain, I would like to get your opinion. Just you made mention about blockchain operating system. Just in 2 minutes, how does it work? What is it, and how does it work?
Yeah, so if we wanted to go into like a very, very technical discussion, I probably wouldn't be the best person for that. We have like all the documentations of the blockchain operating system up online that you can check out at near.org. But I'd say, how it works is you have like this open ecosystem of components, right? So think of like a GitHub, right? GitHub has all these different components and open source code that builders go to when they're trying to build something specific. The same thing kind of exists on this blockchain operating system, particularly around front end code. And so it just enables builders to work much more collaboratively with one another in a decentralized way, right? So you can build the whole stack, like I mentioned earlier, of the back end, middleware, and front end, all on the blockchain, all on Near, instead of having to go to multiple different sources to do that. So that's kind of like how it mainly works.
I believe maybe we'll have a conversation, a very dedicated conversation on that, because I went through the BOS and it's fascinating and very much a good one. Maybe we'll have a guest that will, from your organization that will be able to dissect that. So before we wrap it up, what's your closing remark?
Yeah, so I'd say if you're interested in learning more about Near, I'd recommend going to near.org. So right now you can create a wallet using one of the features that the boss actually enables, which the blockchain operating system, we call it the boss, is fast auth or fast authorization. It it allows users to create a wallet in a very Web 2 way. So you get to use like your email, password kind of login, and it spins up a wallet for you. And once you do that, it will direct you to a near social app where you can start sending messages, messing around with decentralized components, and you can interact on the chain without having to upload near tokens, anything like that. So I'd recommend anyone who's interested in learning more in Near, go to near.org, try to spin up your own wallet using FastAuth and just test it out yourself. And you can find me on LinkedIn at William Reynoir, and for anyone who's watching or listening in, feel free to connect and share anything you might have.
Thank you very much. It has really been an amazing conversation, interesting conversation, I must say, with you on this topic, importance of building on a blockchain network. So very fascinating conversation, an informative one, I must say. Thank you very much, William Reynoir, for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you, Obi. It was my pleasure, and hopefully it's have a good night for y'all. I think I'm just starting my morning, but I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you very much for our audience. Thank you for joining as well. And also do wait to visit Coin News Extra for your daily information about what is happening in this industry. And also do wait to download the Coin News Extra TV app on Google Play Store. I will believe the iOS will be coming very soon. Well, bye for now. I remain your host, Lee. Bye for now.